we are going to be creating a brand new database, and to do that we need to go into Access. So you can either hit the search here and key in Access 2016, and then you'll see the desktop app, which you can click on. Or if you have it down on your taskbar, you can just left click on that, and that will launch Access. When you get in here, you are going to want to select blank database. Now that should display this little window, because in Access you actually have to save the file before you do anything else. And so we are going to choose a location, because right now it's going into the document folder, and I actually want to save this into the Access S2 folder that's part of our textbook structure. So I'm going to click on the Browse button, and I'm going to navigate to Access S2, and I'm going to go ahead and open that. And then I'm going to key in the name that I want, which is 2-WE contracts. And then I'm going to click OK. So looking at this, I should see the name 2-WE contracts. And if you don't see that, you can change it. And then you should be putting it into your Access S2 folder. And once you have that, you can go ahead and click Create. And then if you look up here, you should see the name and the location that you selected. If you don't see the correct name or the correct location, there really is no way to save this under a different name while it's open. The other applications in Office, you can go to File and Save As. You can change the location, you can change the name. You cannot do that in Access. Okay, so if you wanted to rename this, you'd actually have to close it. And then you can right-click on the file when it's closed and choose Rename. You can also move the file to a different folder once it is closed. But when it's open, you just pretty much have to live with it with the current name and in the current folder. So once you create this new database file, your first task is going to be to create a table, because there are several different objects in an Access database that you can create, but everything is pretty much based on tables. So very first thing you're going to do is create the table. After you give it the fields, and the fields are just pieces of information that you're going to store in your table. So after you give it the fields, then you go in and enter the data. And once you have a table with data, you can create forms and reports and queries and all that other fun stuff. So we are going to be adding fields to our table. And when you add fields, or if you change fields, you are working with the table structure. So the table structure is made up of the various fields that are in the table. Now in the text, they do have specific field names and data types that they want us to use. So I'm going to kind of pull this over, because this is from the text. And you can see they have our field names in one column, and then they've got the different data types they want us to use in the next column. They've even provided sample data so you get an idea of the type of data that you're going to end up entering into the various fields. Okay, so we'll pull that back over. So when I enter these field names, I'm going to be using that list. And if you saw in that list, the very first field that they're using is ID, and Access puts an ID field in automatically, and it makes this field the primary key. Now, if you don't want the ID field in a table, you can remove it, okay? But in this particular case, we do want it in, so we're going to leave it right there. And we also want it to be the primary key. So we're going to move on to our second field, and that is contract number. So what we're going to do, let's see, that one should be short text. And you'll notice that once we specify what data type it is, the field name is highlighted. So we're going to key in contract, no, right over the top of the generic field 1. Field 1 is a very bad field name, so you do not want to leave those generic names. The field names should indicate what type of data the user needs to enter. Okay, so right now we're giving it a couple different critical pieces of information. We're giving it the name of the field, and we're also telling it what type of data is going to be entered into the field. And in general, most of your fields are going to be short text. The only time you're going to have a field that is numeric, that's a number, is if you might want to do calculations on that number. So we're going to go ahead and start entering our fields. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter now that I've typed contract number. And you'll notice if I press enter, it kind of keeps me in entry mode here. So for my next one, I can select short text, and you'll see that the generic name is highlighted. So I'm going to key in company right over the top, and I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to select short text again. And then I'm going to do contact, FN, which is short for first name. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And then this is also short text, and it is contact, LN, or last name. And I'll press enter, and that'll kind of keep me in this entry mode. Now, what happens if you don't see that drop-down list? Well, then you just click on it and select what you want. Okay, so if you press enter after typing in your name and you don't see the list, just click on it. And see, the next one we're going to do is phone, which is also short text. And then I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Now, this next field is a yes, no field. It's basically going to display as a little checkbox. And if there's a check in it, it means yes. And if there's no check, it means no. So we need to choose yes, no for this one. And it is called renewal. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Then our next one is going to be a date and time field. And the name of the field is start date. Now you'll notice there typically are not spaces in field names. And if there are two words, they're typically, they use what's called camel casing. So you have lowercase, and then at the start of the second word, you make a capital letter. So you can see that in start date, how we've got start, we've got lowercase here, and then when we get to date, we do a capital letter. For the next field after start date, this is end date, and that is also going to be date and time. And then we're going to press enter. Our next one is a shipping fee, and that is going to be currency, which is a type of numeric field. The difference between number and currency is currency will display dollar signs and number doesn't. So we're going to choose currency, and I'm going to key in ship fee. And this is another one where we're using that camel case. So we do lowercase HIP, and at the start of the second word, we're using a capital letter. This is very typical in programming, and quite often these database tables and files are integrated with web applications. So a web program will access them, and that is part of the reasons you don't do spaces between your words. So we've got ship fee. I'm going to go ahead and press enter on that. And for this next one, it is a number. And it is called percentage. And I'm going to press enter, and this brings me to our last one. And this one is for us to enter notes, okay, about the contract or the company. And that is going to be long text. So it's kind of like a comment box. So we'll go ahead and press enter. And then we don't need anything else. So I'm just going to kind of click away to get rid of that. So at this point, we do have all of our fields in our structure. And I don't think they've said to save the table yet, but it is always a good idea to save the table, especially after you do your structure. So we are going to go ahead and save this table. So we're going to call this table contracts. And to save it, all we have to do is click on the Save button on our Quick Access toolbar. And we're going to key in contracts. And then we're going to click OK. So what happens if you misspelled a field name? How do you fix problems? If you click on the field, you'll notice there's a name and caption command in the field ribbon. And you can actually click on that, and you can fix the field name here and click OK. And you can do that for any of the fields. So if you made a typo or if you made a mistake, you certainly can fix it. Now, at this point, we are going to enter some data. And the data that we're going to enter is in your book, and I'm going to enter right here. And the ID is automatically generated. So if you click here, you'll see it says new, and the data type is auto number. And this data type will increase by 1 for each record. So the first record, it's going to have a 1. The second record, it's going to have a 2, etc. So you don't type anything into a field that has a data type of auto number. And you basically just press tab and get to the first field where you do need to enter data. So we're going to go ahead and enter in the contract number. And then we'll press tab and enter the company. And let's see. West Coast. Let's see, I misspelled coast. West Coast movies. Now, where you should be looking for this data is in that contract table I showed you earlier. Let me pull that back over. This contract table that had your sample data in this area, that is where you should be looking as you're entering the data. So I've got contract first name. And again, I'm just pressing tab to go from one field to the next. And for renewal, this is supposed to be yes. So all I have to do is press the space bar, and it puts the little check in there. So I don't really have to take my hands off the keyboard at all. And you'll notice that after you type in the date, it kind of reformats it. And that is okay. And then for the notes, we've got kind of extensive couple lines of notes here. And when I press enter, you'll notice it automatically goes to the next line. Now, what they would like us to do is kind of best fit these columns, because you can see that we can't see all of the data. Some of it is chopped off. So if you remember from the first project, we can double click kind of at the top of that border between our fields. Okay, and we could also select the fields, go into home, go into more, and go into field width. And we could choose best fit there. Okay, and using that command actually best fits everything, so you don't have to do that double clicking at the top of every single field. Okay, but you do want to make sure you can see all of your data. And then once you've gotten that, you're going to save your changes. And then we can actually close this table. Now, a lot of students make the mistake of closing the database instead of just closing the table. So to close the table, you're just going to right-click on the table and click on Close. Okay, and then if you want to open it, you simply double-click. And we will be continuing working on this table in our next little activity.